Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the quiet outskirts of Pine Ridge, a town shrouded in the kind of stillness that cloaks hidden secrets, the sun dipped beneath the horizon, bleeding hues of orange and purple across the sky. The air hung thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant rustling of leaves. A stark contrast to the impending dread that would soon engulf the community. Pine Ridge, known for its tight-knit population and quaint charm, was a place where everyone knew each other, or so they thought. Beneath a facade of normalcy lay an unsettling undercurrent that would soon come to light. On the evening of April 12, 2021, the townsfolk were oblivious to the darkness that would soon seep into their lives. Among them was Elena Carter, a 28-year-old schoolteacher who had recently moved from the city in search of a quieter life. With her warm smile and compassionate spirit, she quickly garnered the affection of her students and neighbors alike. But the still air of Pine Ridge would soon be shattered. Hours later, the first signs of trouble began to surface when Elena failed to return from her evening walk. Her absence was met with concern first among her close friends, and then throughout the community as the sun gave way to darkness. Phone calls were made, and as the clock ticked past midnight, the unease transformed into alarm. It was at this hour that the first search began. A coalition of friends, family, and neighbors gathered at the local park, flashlights in hand, hearts heavy with work. Little did they know, the tranquil town of Pine Ridge was on the brink of a tragedy that would change it forever. They would soon learn that in the shadows lurked a malevolence that had set its sights on a beloved member of their community. The victim. As the search for Elena Carter ramped up in the affectionately named Pine Park, the feeling of solidarity mingled with a suffocating dread. Friends recalled the last time they saw her brimming with energy, her laughter echoing in the air as she chatted animatedly about her latest lesson plans. She had always been the vibrant soul of their small circle, a beacon of positivity, who brought creativity into the lives of her students, igniting a passion for learning that many had long forgotten. Elena's life had not been devoid of hardship. Raised in a bustling city, she had persevered through a tumultuous childhood shaped by a fractured family. Her determination to become a teacher was born from those struggles. She envisioned herself as a guiding force for children who required support, just as she once had. After earning her degree, she found solace in the picturesque ambience of Pine Ridge, believing it was the start of a new chapter. As midnight melted into the early hours of April 13th, the town's law enforcement officially joined the search. Sheriff Thompson, a seasoned officer with over 2 decades of service, took charge of the operation. He knew Pine Ridge like the back of his hand, but this case felt different. It brought with it an urgency he had not encountered in years. He gathered the volunteers and dispersed them into smaller groups, assigning areas they were most familiar with. The shimmering lights of the flashlights flickered like fireflies through the trees, feeding the collective hope that they might find her just beyond the thicket. But 4 hours into the search, that hope began to wane. The stillness of the night echoed with anxiety, punctuated only by the rustling leaves that played a cruel symphony under tense breaths. As calls for Elena grew chorused and desperate, they remained unanswered, leaving only a haunting void in the hearts of those who loved her. Pine Ridge was losing its brightest light, and fear soon gripped its residents, the kind of fear that whispered of danger lurking beneath their peaceful existence. The crime scene. Dawn broke over Pine Ridge, its pale light illuminating the tranquil landscape, hauntingly contrasting the turmoil that had gripped the town throughout the night. The vibrant colors of spring emerged, yet they failed to chase away the sense of foreboding that hung in the air. As the search parties returned empty-handed, the sheriff received an unexpected call that would forever alter the small community's sense of security. A local hiker had stumbled upon something unusual at the edge of the woods, a place known for its serene hiking trails and vibrant flora. Rushing to the scene, Sheriff Thompson's heart raced with a mixture of dread and determination. Maybe there was a lead, a shred of hope that would resurrect the desperate search for Elena. As they arrived, the scene stretched thin, with tension a lonely path, twisted into the trees, dappled with early morning light. The hiker, a man in his late 30s named Michael, stood near a cluster of bushes, his expression a portrait of disbelief. I thought it was trash at first, but then his voice faltered as he pointed toward the ground. Thompson stepped closer, his stomach churning. They found a small red coat, unmistakably Elena's, crumpled and discarded among the underbrush. Adrenaline surged, a malicious pulse in his chest. This was no longer just a case of a missing woman. The woods, once a refuge of beauty, transformed into a sinister realm filled with the echoes of unspoken fears. Immediately, Thompson and his deputies roped off the area, their instincts honed by years of experience guiding them through the difficult choice to continue the search on foot or call in a forensic team. The decision weighed heavily. They collectively understood the implications. In hushed tones, they strategized, realizing urgency had morphed into necessity. As forensic experts arrived, combing the area with meticulous care, the sight of evidence markers began to dot the landscape, stark reminders of a brutal reality taking shape. Each measured step forward solidified the dark truth. Pine Ridge was now at the center of a crime. The hidden darkness that had secretly lurked beneath their everyday lives had emerged a predator in their midst. The early investigation. With the discovery of Elena's red coat, the mood in Pine Ridge shifted dramatically. What began as a hopeful search devolved into a somber investigation. Sheriff Thompson, resolute yet weary-eyed, gathered his team at the command post established outside the park. They reviewed the evidence thus far, each small element holding the potential to unravel a bigger picture. The initial search quickly evolved from a community effort to an official investigation, and the sheriff called for a comprehensive timeline of Elena's last known movements. With a notebook in hand, he coordinated interviews, hoping to piece together where she had been leading up to her disappearance. First, he spoke with her closest friends, ages crumpled with concern, yet eager to share what they could remember. Susan, a fellow teacher, recalled an unusual text Elena had sent earlier that week. She mentioned feeling uneasy about someone she had seen around town. I thought it was just stress from her job, but now we can't stop thinking about it. The words clung to the air like smoke, darkening the cloud overhead. Each conversation broadened the canvas, revealing multiple threads of potential leads. As Thompson sifted through the input from locals, a picture began to form. A man had indeed been seen loitering around the school where Elena taught, unsettling the community. Described as tall, with shaggy hair and an unnatural aura, he lingered just outside school property, exchanging awkward glances with students and parents alike. The more they dug, the greater the urgency bubbled beneath the surface. Despite the small-town facade of safety, Pine Ridge's web of secrecy became apparent. With a growing list of names and narrow descriptions, Thompson's gut churned. Someone within the community was cloaked in despair. As the sun arched higher, illuminating the town, it felt as though every shadow concealed the threat that had turned their reality inside out. Who had Elena come across in her new world? Each answer was just another stepping stone towards a chilling truth, and with every hour that passed, the urgency to solve the mystery deepened. The dead ends. Days slipped by like shadows, and as the investigation into Elena's disappearance unfolded, the initial fervor began to wane. Sheriff Thompson, hunched over a cluttered desk at the command post, felt the weight of unanswered questions pressing down on him. The town, once vibrant and hopeful, now bore the burden of uncertainty, a malaise settling over Pine Ridge like a long, uninvited fog. Despite the promising leads from local interviews, each turned out to be little more than mirages. The man who had been seen lingering near the school vanished into thin air as quickly as he had appeared, leaving behind nothing but descriptions that varied more with every retelling. Without hard evidence or any solid leads to pursue, what had begun as a case with potential felt like a slow descent into a series of dead ends. Sheriff Thompson's frustration simmered as he clung to the thin thread of hope provided by Susan's account about Elena's unease with someone in the area. Detectives assigned to the case worked tirelessly to run down every tip, contacting local businesses to check surveillance footage to find no trace of Elena. Time, that relentless enemy, began to erode confidence, shifting the atmosphere from urgency to weariness. One afternoon, as Thompson sifted through case files in his office, he received a call that would momentarily rekindle his determination. A motorist had reported spotting a woman matching Elena's description in a neighboring county walking alone on a deserted road under a setting sun. They seemed hopeful, grasping at a fraying lifeline that Elena was somehow still alive. But when officers arrived at the location, no sign of her remained. This heartbreaking pattern of false sightings became a cruel joke. Hope built up only to be dashed moments later. With every passing day, the palpable sadness surrounding the case deepened, leaving Sheriff Thompson wrestling with the grim reality that answers were slipping further from his grasp. The community, now buzzing with whispers and speculation, contrasted sharply with the silence that filled his mind. He pondered every detail of the victim's vibrant spirit, the dark shadows that had seemingly emerged from nowhere, and that deep-seated instinct that telltale signs were still hiding beneath the surface. In a town they thought was safe, how was it that someone walked among them undetected? A break in the case. Just as the weight of the investigation began to feel insurmountable, a flicker of hope emerged on the morning of April 20th, 2021. Sheriff Thompson sat at the command post, his eyes tracing the reports of the week that lay sprawled across the table. The sound of ringing phones and murmuring voices faded into a dull background hum. He was deep in thought, still grappling with the threads that had frayed so easily. Then the door burst open, and Deputy Amelia Rivera strode in, her face etched with urgency. "Sheriff, you need to see this." She handed him a printed report, her fingers trembling slightly. It was a map, dotted with markers pinning various locations along the edges of Pine Ridge. A local fisherman had come forward, claiming to have seen a suspicious vehicle parked several times near the wooded trails, not far from where Elena's coat was discovered. A dark blue sedan, parked just out of sight marked by a mismatched bumper sticker that read lost, but not forgotten. Thompson felt a surge of adrenaline as he carefully memorized the coordinates on the map. This was the first concrete lead he had received in days. It reinvigorated the group, their collective focus sharpening at the prospect of tracking down this mysterious vehicle. The sheriff's department dispatched a team to canvass the area, hoping to locate any surveillance footage from nearby homes or businesses. While the rest of the deputies moved forward with renewed energy, Thompson called in the local towing company to gather records of any such vehicles registered for the past month. As they worked through the leads, the tension in the air thickened, a cocktail of hope and fear mingling beneath the surface. Each passing hour felt critical, a race against time to uncover the truth. For the first time in days, Thompson allowed himself to bask in a flicker of optimism, the kind of feeling he had all but drowned in the monotony of dead ends. But the shadow of unease remained, as he couldn't shake the feeling that time was fleeting. The longer the search went on, the more vulnerable Elena's fate felt. The excitement of the breakthrough fueled his drive. He clung to the belief that amidst the layers of grief, they might still find her alive, waiting to be rescued from the darkness that had closed in around Pine Ridge. The suspect. The day continued to unfold like a tightly wound clock. The tension palpable as deputies scoured the edges of Pine Ridge in pursuit of the dark blue sedan. Sheriff Thompson remained absorbed in the details, coordinating efforts between his team and the local towing company, praying this would finally unravel the threads of the case. It was then that the call came in, delivering the news they had been hoping for. A vehicle matching the description had been located parked at the outskirts of town, abandoned and eerily silent. Witnesses had seen a lone figure step away from the driver's seat late that night, a sight marred by shadows and the creeping midnight fog. A chill swept over Thompson as he reviewed the details relayed by one of his deputies who had responded to the scene. They meticulously combed through the sedan, collecting fingerprints and any personal belongings they could find. It was an ordinary car, but its dark history began to stir from within the depths, small clues simmering at the surface. A baseball cap lay on the passenger seat, emblazoned with the insignia of a local high school, suggesting a potential link to the community. But the most important find came when an officer opened the trunk and discovered a small bag containing clothing items that matched the description of Elena's outfitted denim jacket and a pair of shoes that were too small for any adult male. The evidence weighed heavy in Thompson's gut. They were finally stepping closer to the truth, but with it came the undeniable weight of darkness. By late afternoon, a name surfaced in the investigation, a local resident named Mark Dillon, known for his erratic behavior and history of harassment. He had previously been questioned for suspicious incidents around school grounds, yet had always slipped through the cracks, a product of the town's reluctance to confront uncomfortable truth. As Thompson's team prepared to bring Mark in for questioning, a sense of urgency swept over the room. Phone calls were made, and the atmosphere transformed. It was no longer just about hope, but rather the fear that they may be confronting a man capable of unspeakable action. As the sun waned in the horizon, casting long shadows across Pine Ridge, Thompson felt his heart race. They had a suspect, and with every tick of the clock, there was a terrifying possibility that the truth would not only shatter their community, but reveal the hidden dangers lurking within. The weight of the unknown loomed heavily ahead, and as they prepared to confront the darkness, one thing became overwhelmingly clear. They were racing against time, not just for justice, but for Elena's light. The trial of Mark Dillon began on a brisk autumn day, the air sharply contrasting the sweltering tension that permeated the courthouse. No longer a small-town affair, the proceedings drew media outlets from across the state, each eager to capture the intense drama of a case that had sent shockwaves through Pine Ridge. In the packed courtroom, whispers oscillated between hope and anguish as the jury took their seats, the sound echoing through the silence like a distant thunder. Sheriff Thompson sat in the back, his jaw clenched and hands folded tightly in his lap, knowing full well the weight of responsibility that had led them to this moment. The walls of the room felt as though they had closed in, the psychological strain palpable not just on Thompson, but on the entire community, desperate for closure. Elena's friends and family filled the spectator section, their faces etched with a blend of skepticism and sorrow. Susan sat in the front row, gripping a small photograph of Elena, her haunted eyes filled with lingering fear, but also a flicker of resolve. They had been waiting for this moment, aching for justice, yet no one could predict how the truth would unfurl. As the trial progressed, the prosecution laid out their case with meticulous precision. Evidence from the abandoned Sedanthi clothing found inside, fingerprints lifted from the steering wheel created a tapestry that connected Dylan to the crime. Witnesses emerged, including the fisherman who had seen Elena's coat, regaling jurors with their accounts. Yet, through each testimony, a veil of discomfort thickened. The courtroom itself felt like a living entity, exhaling frustration and anguish. When it was time for the defense to present its case, they skillfully sought to dismantle the prosecution's narrative, painting Mark as a scapegoat for a crime he claimed he did not commit. He invoked the specter of reasonable doubt, leading them down a path of circumstantial evidence. But there was something in his demeanor that unsettled the room. His gaze was shiftier than it had been in previous interrogations. The air thickened with an unspoken accusation. As the final day of testimony unfolded, Thompson sat at the edge of his seat, heart racing, knowing that the outcome could shatter the community's fragile grip on hope. It was during closing arguments that the prosecutor delivered a poignant message, referencing not only the evidence but the vibrant life that had been snuffed out, all the laughter, dreams, and ambitions that had evaporated with Elena's disappearance. When the jury began their deliberation, silence fell heavily over the courtroom. Minutes turned to hours, and as anxiety wrapped its fingers around the spectators, the reality of the situation hit home. No verdict could undo the pain that had ripped through Pine Ridge, nor could it bring Elena back. But it would lay bare the truth, what had happened to her. And for many, that was all that remained. Finally, the jury returned, the foreman's expression unreadable. Sheriff Thompson braced himself, knowing that whatever they said next would resonate far beyond the courthouse walls, echoing through the heart of Pine Ridge and resonating within every soul that yearned for justice. With a deep breath, the foreman spoke the words that would forever haunt their collective memory. We find the defendant guilty. The aftermath. The atmosphere in Pine Ridge shifted dramatically following the trial. The courtroom erupted into a cacophony of mixed emotions, relief wrestling with deep, unresolved grief. While the conviction of Mark Dillon provided a semblance of justice, it could not extinguish the ache that had settled within the hearts of Elena's friends and family. Sheriff Thompson stood in the back of the courtroom, absorbing the reactions around him. Some broke down in tears, while others clenched fists in quiet defiance, vowing never to forget. As the news of the verdict spread through the community, conversations shifted from shock and suspicion to a solemn reflection on the fragility of safety. Pine Ridge, once viewed as a sanctuary, had revealed its vulnerabilities in the most heartbreaking way possible. In the weeks that followed, community gatherings took on a new tone. Candlelight vigils held in Elena's honor became staples in the town square. Each flickering candle symbolized not just remembrance, but also the resilience of a community determined to rebuild their sense of security. As names were whispered and memories shared, a collective healing began, often punctuated with laughter and tears amidst the sorrow. They were not just honoring Elena, but also every soul touched by the shadows of the tragedy. As autumn carried on, Thanksgiving approached, and while many families gathered to celebrate, the absence of Elena was a poignant reminder of her lost presence. The Carter family established a scholarship in Elena's name, ensuring her legacy would live on through the children she had inspired. Local businesses rallied to support the initiative, hosting fundraising events and donating a percentage of their earnings, infusing hope into the community as a coping mechanism. But even amidst the healing efforts, the scar of fear lingered. Conversations about safety buzzed in local cafes. Discussions on self-defense courses and neighborhood watch programs became commonplace. The undercurrents of distrust had seeped into the fabric of their daily lives. Small-town innocence was forever altered. Sheriff Thompson continued his rounds, keenly aware of the continued whispers that haunted Pine Ridge. The aftermath of the case was not just a story of closure. It was a battle against the shadows that had emerged alongside it. As Halloween approached, adorned decorations felt bittersweet, reminding him that even in the season of festivities, life had irreversibly changed. In those quiet moments of solitude, he contemplated his own role, the burden he carried, and the unshakable promise he made to uphold the safety of his community, ensuring that no one else would experience the same heartache. Elena's spirit remained woven into the lives of those who knew her, binding them together amidst their shared grief. The investigation may have concluded, but the lessons learned echoed deeply: vigilance, compassion, and an unwavering dedication to preserving the light within a community that had faced its darkest hour. Reflection. As the first snowflakes of winter began to drift through Pine Ridge, the transformation of the town was palpable. Sheriff Thompson stood near the entrance of Pine Park, where vibrant autumn leaves had given way to an expansive blanket of white. The scenery felt eerily serene, as if nature itself was attempting to cover up the haunting memories that had taken root just months prior. But beneath that pristine layer lay a deep-seated grief. And as Thompson contemplated the emotional footprint left behind, he felt the familiar pang of loss. In quiet moments, he found himself reflecting on the inconspicuous details that had led to the tragic encounters, the overlooked concerns, the shadows that had danced just out of sight. The echoes of Elena's laughter still reverberated in his mind. He could almost hear her voice amidst the winter chill, reminding him of the vital importance of listening to community, to intuition, and to each other. Pine Ridge was a place of resilience, and as the days passed, the story shifted from one of despair to one of perseverance. Each memorial scholarship awarded in Elena's name represented not just loss, but a profound commitment to ensure that her values lived on in the heart of the town. Her community rallied, refusing to let fear define them, forging connections through shared experiences and fostering empathy amidst their pain. Reflecting back on the trial, Thompson recognized how vital it was to remember the lessons learned. He envisioned future town meetings, open forums where fears could be shared, where safety initiatives would nurture not only security, but also vulnerability and togetherness. Though the layers of trauma would linger, Pine Ridge was poised for recovery, a patchwork stitched together with hope. In the cold embrace of winter, Thompson carried the promise to honor the past while navigating the complexities of future safeguarding. Elena's absence would always cast a long shadow, but he vowed to keep that light alive, illuminating the path forward for a community hallowed by shared loss, yet united in forging a brighter tomorrow.